Typically, I don't do comparison videos between keyboard cases much these days, but today is a little bit different. I have two keyboards for the Mini 6, which I've reviewed them before. They are both familiar and different at the same time. Sadly, there hasn't been any newer ones coming out lately to review. Apple seems to have forgotten the smallest iPad, so has the accessory makers. The keyboard case reviews I've done seem to be more of a rarity these days. I've been wanting to do this for a while now. Doing a comparison video between the F22 Wing and the Basis keyboard case. They both have about the same form factor and are almost identical, but there's enough there to really set them apart from each other. Hey, it's V, let's get started. This video has been on my desktop for almost a year. I'm slowly getting through all my old stuff to get to the new stuff. I tend to do everything in segments from like recording, audio, that sort of thing. This is the F22 Wing keyboard case. I've reviewed this keyboard to death. I've done more than a few videos on this. They do make a bigger version of this for the 11-inch Air. The non-M4 11-inch will work. Unfortunately, I don't have this iPad in my arsenal, or I would have reviewed it. Sadly, they don't have a version for the 13-inch. This can be picked up off Amazon for about $50. The price does fluctuate. The build quality here is nice. It doesn't feel premium like what Apple has, but it doesn't feel cheap, so it's somewhere in between. If you are a fan of my channel, you know this is one of the better keyboard cases for the Mini 6. Really within the top 5. Owning the iPad Mini 6 has been interesting. It's not quite as useful as the bigger ones for like work in like an office, but it's really portable. I actually use this more than my phone. I treat my 13-inch iPad more of a typical laptop, but my Mini 6, when I go out to a job to do a project, I use it for diagrams, photos, getting signatures for projects, group chats, or just typing out emails with a keyboard case. I do this more rather than using my phone. It's been essential for working out in the field, so I do need a good keyboard case for that. This keyboard works really well for that. I won't really write a thesis, but maybe a few paragraphs. This keyboard case is really thin. It gets decent battery life, about 30 to 40 hours before being recharged. The key travel is decent for having unlimited real estate. It attaches with magnets on the backside. The back cover will bend down into a kickstand. It's really nifty. It's good for a tabletop surface. That's about it. It's barely any thinner than a normal folio case, and it has a keyboard built in. The only downside is it requires a special charger. There's no USB-C built in because it's so thin. It needs this MagSafe looking one. There's only one in the box, and if it is lost, $10 for a new one, and they are hard to come by. The keyboard case does have auto wake and sleep. Some of the special symbols this has are rearranged into weird spots. Muscle memory is not your best friend here. With the internal battery, I do tend to charge this about every 10 days or so, depending on my usage, but not having USB-C is annoying. When I travel out of town for work, sometimes I wonder if I should bring the charger with me. When charging the keyboard case, I can't really close the keyboard. I can only charge the keyboard while it is open. It's not really a deal breaker, but it's like the small things which do get to me. The keyboard is about 5mm thick. It's really thin but consistent. There's a really good reason why it doesn't have USB-C. This is easily one of the best keyboard cases for the iPad Mini 6 to date. In the other corner is the Basis keyboard case. They do make a bigger version for the other iPads, from the regular entry-level one to both Airs and both Pros. Originally, I saw this back in March of 2023. It disappeared. It reappeared back in October. I originally picked this up off AliExpress for about $80. It was on Amazon for about a week. It got pulled. It is available on a few other websites. It is a bit more expensive compared to the competition. It has a similar form factor to the F22. The build quality here takes a massive hit. It has like a fake leather plastic to it. It tries to come off as premium, but it just feels tacky. The iPad will attach the back cover with magnets. The back cover bends down for the kickstand. It can be positioned in either portrait or landscape mode or on any surface. The keyboard is more of a traditional layout. The keys have less travel between each of them. The biggest difference between both keyboards, this one has USB-C. There's no special cable required for charging. Because of the inclusion with USB-C, the case is quite thicker on the backside. This one also has a bigger battery at 300 milliamps. Charging takes about 3 hours. It gets 100 hours of usage before it's drained. There are some trade-offs with this. At its thickest point, 5.6 millimeters. The thinnest point is 4.1 millimeters. The thickness is inconsistent. There's a 1.5 millimeter difference on the whole keyboard case, so it sort of slopes down. It doesn't seem like a problem, but there is. Trying to keep the keyboard case closed doesn't quite work. Unless you put the keyboard part face down with the iPad on top, it will remain closed, but besides that, it doesn't. Putting it into any bag might cause it to snag and hang open to scratch the screen. If they wanted to correct this, if they made the thickness for the whole keyboard case the same to like resolve this problem. So when trying to close this keyboard case, it doesn't really work the best. Like no matter whatever you do, it always just hangs open. If they made the thickness the same, they could have fixed this. It is one of those things which it is a deal breaker for myself because no matter what I do, it won't close. It's one of those things which should have been fixed. This also doesn't have auto wake and sleep. The main reason someone would get either of these would be because of the keyboard. The keyboard of the F22 has a soft fabric to it. The keys are a little bit smaller, but more spaced out with better travel. The Basis keyboard is hard plastic. The keys are a little bit bigger, and there's a very little travel between each one. I find pressing the keys of the F22 have a better click to it, just have better switches underneath. They don't feel mushy and are pretty firm. Pressing the keys of the Basis keyboard have to be pressed harder to really get a click. Like the keys are firm, like the switches underneath are very mushy. It's not a good typing experience. This might be why the F22 is like a soft fabric compared to hard plastic. The travel between each key of the F22 is spaced out enough. I don't tend to have the surrounding keys. The opposite is true for the Basis. The keys are so close together. I do tend to hit multiple keys at the same time. Tend to find the typing experience on the Basis keyboard very poor. Here, the F22 is a better keyboard. It's very hard to have a good QWERTY keyboard for such a small tablet. I'm not going to write a thesis paper, but like a couple of Facebook posts, a few paragraphs, maybe some text messaging. The keyboards here excel well at that. Typically on average, I get about 40 words per minute with the F22 with a few spelling mistakes. On the flip side, with the Basis one, I can barely get 30, and I do have more than a few misspelled words. With a full-size keyboard from my iPad Pro, I can get about 70 words per minute, so I'm not really that slow. Getting down to the nitty-gritty stuff, with both keyboards, they look similar, but they're quite different. I would choose the F22 over most keyboard cases out there. The QWERTY keyboard case is the best typing experience I've ever used for having such a small form factor. That one is also much bulkier. I can easily get around 50 words per minute with that keyboard. For the best portability, the F22 is the best all-around keyboard, even without having USB-C. At the end of the day, does the smallest iPad really need a keyboard case? Apple doesn't make an official keyboard case here, so other companies have to step up. I started my unofficial YouTube career with my Mini 6, so I like to do this sort of thing. Like most keyboard cases are crap, but there are some good ones. The Magic Keyboard by Doco, the F22, and the QWERTY are, in my opinion, the best three out there. I'm always up for something new. The Basis really isn't worth the price tag. I'm pretty sure there's a couple good reasons why it was pulled from Amazon. The F22 is far from perfect, but it's good enough for what it offers, with a lack of USB-C in favor of a MagSafe style port. It's not ideal, but it does make sense. If they came out with a second revision with USB-C, made it a little bit thicker, it would almost be perfect. So like always, it's V, stay classy.